All right, hey everybody, I'm George Affleck along with Emile Scheffel and Mike Wilson. We're the team here at Campaign University, and just want to remind those people who are in the Campaign University that our Monday call, as per usual, will be happening. So if you're in the course, in the training course, make sure you show up on Monday for our one-on-one or internal kind of communication, our little Zoom calls that we do with the team to really dig deep into campaigning and how to win elections. Today we have a very special guest. I'm going to let Emile take it over from here. It's really excited about today's live, and I think you'll find it very interesting because it's really all about winning, which is kind of important in politics. So I'm going to hand it over to Emile, and he's going to take it from here. Go for it, Emile.
Thanks, George. Yeah, winning is our favorite topic here at the Campaign University, and there's nobody better to talk about it and how to get it done than Katy Merrifield, one of my dear friends, also a former boss of mine. Been trying to impress her ever since, mostly without success. But for those of you who don't know, Katy's managed 2 winning leadership campaigns in British Columbia, one of the very few people to ever accomplish that feat. Both incredibly executed campaigns that we're excited to learn more about. She served as the head of communications for the premiers of both BC and Alberta. Again, I think one of the few to hold both of those jobs back to back. And she's currently the VP for British Columbia at Wellington advocacy, where Katy advises clients on communications, campaign management, and advocacy initiatives. So welcome, Katy. How are you doing today?
I'm good. You make me sound so much more impressive than I actually am.
Just trying to raise the bar on you as high as possible.
So Katy, used to always work with people more talented than you. So that's why I've benefited so much, because I've worked with Emile a lot.
Very kind. It's the key to my success as well, such as it is. So, Katy, we've got a few questions for you that we're going to ask, and then I know that folks who are watching will, I'm sure, have questions as well. So, folks, just pop those in the comments under the video. Mike's going to be keeping an eye on those, and we'll make sure that we get those asked to Katy as well before we wrap up today. So, Katy, as we said, you've played key roles in a number of winning leadership campaigns and some other winning campaigns as well. When it comes to winning elections within a party, like a leadership race or a nomination race or a primary down in the States, what are the most important elements of a winning strategy in your experience?
So obviously, every campaign is unique and often has to be tailored to your specific needs. So I think it's really important to have an attitude of flexibility and creativity. But most importantly, it's about that connection with your target voters. That is really the key element. So within a party for a leadership race, which is where most of my experience is, where I think a great way to start is to ask yourself a series of questions. First about your target audience, and then about your candidate. So, who is your audience? Who are you primarily appealing to? Do you need to sell a bunch of new memberships? How many do you need to sell? And who are those target new members? So from there, that's how you map out a really practical ground game on more of the tactical side. Equally as important is, who is your candidate? And when you ask yourself that question, do not just accept the version of themselves that they present to the public. You need to know this person inside and out. So of course you want to know your strengths, or their strengths, and how to capitalize on them. But I would say, even more importantly, you need to know what their weaknesses are, because nobody is perfect. And so, for example, some people are gifted communicators. Others require a lot more prep and practice. Nothing wrong with that. Some people are naturally charismatic and can work a room, and then other people, like me, would need somebody to guide them along, right? Because that level of social acuity is just not inherent. Again, nothing wrong with that, but you need to know those granular details about the person that you're going to be working for. And then I would say, once you have these pieces ironed out, you absolutely want to make sure that you've got a really clear message and a platform that resonates with your target audience. So you don't need a fully fleshed out textbook of everything that you've ever stood for and everything you ever will. But I'd say you need a clear set of values with a handful of key policies that align with your vision. So in a more practical example, in the recent Conservative leadership race, Pierre had an incredibly clear proposition, right? Fire the gatekeepers, make Canada the freest country on earth, take back control of your life. So these central messages were easy to understand, easy to digest, they resonated well, and they influenced all of his policies going forward. So that was that level of transparency and continuity. I would say after, or simultaneously, after you've addressed your audience, your candidate, the message, you want to make sure that you've got some key team members in place to handle incredibly important things like brand identity, digital strategy, finances, advertising, and then general communications and issues management. And when you pull all that together seamlessly, you win.
Sounds easy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that super actionable sort of step-by-step approach that we're such big fans of at the Campaign University. So great segue into our next question. What's the most engaging or exciting campaign that you've worked on, and why was that?
This is a tough call, I would say, between the 2013 BC election campaign with Christy Clark and the then BC Liberals, and the 2022 Conservative leadership with Pierre. So I can talk a little bit about why both were enjoyable in their own way. So in 2013, we were not forecast to win, and that's for everyone who worked on that campaign. Like that's putting it mildly, right? We were in government, but we were 20 points down in all of the public polls. We had a hostile media environment, a rising BC Conservative Party that fractured the right side of our base, and an opposition that was like basically measuring the drapes of the Premier's office brazenly. But I would say there are a few campaigners that are as talented as Christy Clark and Mike McDonald, who run the campaign, and they really proved that in spades with the outcome of the 2013 election. So what was key to their victory, at least from my observation, they had relentless optimism despite all the negativity that was going on in the media and among stakeholders. They had a real depth of understanding of the NDP and the leader of the opposition, Adrian Dix in particular. Christy put forward an exciting and compelling vision for LNG. And shout out to our friend Don Miller, the advertising strategy was incredible. And some of the ad work that came out of that campaign, that has stood the test of time. People still try to copy it. So those key components, I feel like that was a key to the success. I'll also say, look, there was spectacular tour visuals, there was a talented team, solid opposition research, that was my baby, and polling, our internal polling that put all the public pollsters to shame. So it was exciting because the expectations, like externally, were about 6 feet under, but internally, we had a team and a vibe that was optimistic, and it was humble and hardworking, which humble and hardworking are really fundamental to any campaign success. I know it sounds basic, but there are so many campaigns, candidates, and organizers that do not practice that, and it's viewed in the outcome, right? Pierre's leadership was just like nothing I've ever experienced before, due to the groundswell of organic interest in his candidacy across the country. So a brief anecdote, it was early in the campaign, we were planning for Pierre's first visit to British Columbia. And I was told by HQ in no uncertain terms, like I was to find venues that could hold a minimum of 1,000, preferably up to 3. And that we were going to get people out on like a Thursday at 4 o'clock with like 4 days notice. And I nearly died of a panic attack. Not just because of my personality, but like I was like, you guys, we're in Vancouver here. Okay. We're not exactly known for our grassroots political activity here. And you like, if you want to get 1,000 people out, like that requires a lot of notice. And they're like, no, like we know that this is going to happen. Don't worry about it. Just do it. And I was like, okay, fingers crossed. We advertised this event in Vancouver for I think 3 or 4 days. We had over 1,000 RSVP and even more show up. 3,000 in Kelowna, 2,000 in Langley. Like I have never seen like this level of passionate, engaged, and most importantly, like organic interest. Like I didn't have to call a single person and be like, hey, you want to come? Like it just happened because of that momentous groundswell. So that was really incredible. And then practically speaking, look, like Pierre's HQ team, so we had like provincial leads. I was the BC provincial lead. And then we had a team at HQ based out of Ontario. They were formidable. Like talented team, very clear plan that they adapted when necessary without straying from their core principles. They had a very consistent message, brilliant digital presence, and a lot of humility. And I mean that from every member on that team and from the leader himself. Pierre was always the front runner. He never acted like it once. He campaigned like he was the underdog. So that was really key. It was no stone unturned. He would wait and meet every single person that came to his event, even if he was waiting in a photo line for 6 hours straight. It was amazing. So yeah, those are my two favorites.
That's awesome. And thanks for sharing those stories that really kind of bring those campaigns to life. And yeah, underlining those themes of humility and hard work. It's always frustrating to see politicians that kind of start to feel like they're more important than the voters that get them there. And sometimes it comes back to bite them, which is a segue to our next question, which is, Katy, having been a political campaigner, having led opposition research and all the fun involved in that, and being a professional communicator yourself, what are some common mistakes that you see candidates and their teams make, and what advice would you give them to screw up less?
I love talking about things that I hate. This might be like a bit of a vent. I think like a problem is, or this is something I dislike. Number one, assuming that you're a star candidate and too good for a nomination. If you think you are, you're probably not. Number two, assuming you're an excellent communicator. Communicating is difficult, especially political communications, which is remarkably unforgiving and must be tailored to a variety of different demos. So again, if you personally just think you're great, you probably need some work. Assuming that you don't need to prep or practice. That's another one. And then ignoring your grassroots supporters or taking them for granted. Assuming people that will be with you because of like your brilliant personality. No, like you need to nurture support and value it. And then I guess lastly, acting like you're above social media. That's another frustration, because that is where people get their news. That is where people form their opinions. Like nobody is above it anymore. So that was quite cathartic. Those are all the things that I don't like. But in terms of like overall practical advice, as I touched on with Pierre, remain humble, remain focused, stay in touch with real people, not just weird political organizers like myself, and never stop practicing or learning. Getting into some more specific examples or common mistakes. So I often, in candidates or in campaigns, I see some that lack a clear message. So if your central message is complicated or bland, it won't land. So from 2013, let's compare. So Adrian Dixon, the NDP, was change for the better, one practical step at a time. That's really boring. It's like yawn. It doesn't really say anything. Christie's was strong economy, secure tomorrow. It's more crisper, like it's crisp and it's powerful. These things matter.
Yeah.
I would say if you have a weak online presence, like the digital landscape today it's incredibly important. As I said, it's how the majority of people read their news, form their opinions, engage. So if you're non-existent, or often even worse, if it's very obvious that a staffer is posting bland content like on your behalf, it really comes off as inauthentic. And so you're not doing yourself or your campaign any favors there. What else? Ignoring grassroots and ignoring grassroots campaigning. So if you're a candidate, this number is just one that I pulled out, but like around 75%, maybe say 60 to 75% of your time should be on the doorstep, like engaging with real people, communicating and having real conversations with your average voters. I think that ABC, for a kind of real life example, last year's municipal campaign, ABC did a great job of this. Like I think they really demonstrated that to perfection. They recanvassed and canvassed some more, right? I'm missing one. Money is important. You need money like to run a successful campaign. And if you can't do that, or you won't, you will have less resources than your opponent. You are giving them an advantage. Don't do that.
Love it. That was a mini masterclass as expected. Katy, a lot of our group members and viewers today are folks who have not been actively involved in politics in the past, and they're sort of taking their first steps into establishing themselves within their community, within a political party, with an interest in potentially running or managing a campaign in the near future. What advice would you give to somebody who's just taking those very first steps into politics and figuring out how to kind of plant their flag and make a name for themselves?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think it's spectacular and fantastic when people are making that jump into the political arena, because often it's not for the faint of heart, but it is so necessary that we elect strong, good people to serve in public office. So number one, and this is advice from Gordon Campbell, actually, when he was recruiting candidates specifically. It's beware the person who says who they want to be rather than what they want to do. So first, when you go into politics, please have an idea of how you'd like to make your riding, your province, or your country better, not what position of power you want to hold. I would say you also want to know your values and the party's values, and they need to connect and line up. So I get frustrated when some people just really want to be elected. And I get that. I get if you have a strong desire to run for public office, that is wonderful. But when you don't care what level of government it is or what political party, that screams you just want power. And I find that really off-putting. And I would imagine that voters do too. So after establishing your values and make sure you live by them, I would say you want to be very visible. So go to events. Go help at events. More importantly, be an active party supporter to A, demonstrate value, and B, to build your own network of support, right? Especially if you want to be a candidate, you want to raise money. So I think one of the biggest contributions that you can give is the introduction of a new network and a new fundraising pipeline that is incredibly valuable to, especially with all the fundraising restrictions that we have now. If you can bring in new supporters and donors, you are really doing a solid. And then lastly, you want to foster good relationships. So with key organizers, with party officials, and of course the leader. So yeah, that would probably be my core pieces of advice on that one.
Yeah, great advice. And I think what weaves all of those pieces of advice together is, as you said, just the importance of doing the hard work and putting in the work. There's no substitute for it. And there's often no shortcuts when you want to be successful in politics. Katy, you've seen firsthand how women sometimes have a different experience in politics than men do, certainly as candidates, but also often in sort of the back rooms and on campaign teams. What advice would you give specifically to women who are preparing themselves to take on key roles in campaigns?
So I think some of this might be more general. It's not gender specific, but some will, I think, hone in more on women than men. Number one, you want to have a personal network out of politics that keeps you sane. And I say this because I didn't have one. I had a few friends that weren't in politics, but most of the folks that are nearest and dearest to me are in this crazy universe. But the really successful politicos that I know have an entirely separate network that just doesn't care. Which it's good, because it is so easy to capitulate to the political bubble. And you need to be reminded of reality on a regular basis. So have that outside network that you can turn to. I would say especially if you want to be a campaigner, you want to know what your skill set is, and you want to know what job responsibilities you would be taking on, and focus in on the work rather than the noise, because there's a lot of noise in political circles. But if you focus on the work, I would say you can go two tracks. Either you're kind of good at a lot of things, or slightly better than mediocre at a lot of things. I put myself in that category. Or you are amazing at one thing, right? Like Mike, digital, just slays all day, right? That is his absolute specialty. So, and neither track is bad. Just pick where your heart lies or your skill set lies. And that's actually a piece of advice I give quite regularly now. I think it is really important. On the personal side, you absolutely want to practice a lot of self-care in a campaign scenario. So I mean regular exercise, a nutrient-dense diet, and sobriety on the campaign trail. This is for candidates especially, but also campaign staff. Campaigns are tough. They are hard on you mentally and physically. And so it is a service to yourself to be in top form. So I take that quite seriously. And then don't ever shy away from like expressing your opinion and its rationale, but get over it quickly if a different decision is chosen, right? Don't take it personally. Politics is a team sport. Campaigns move really fast. Move on, right? And if it turns out it doesn't work out, then, you know, you get to be passive aggressive and say you were right until the end of time, which I regularly do. And then finally, or maybe not finally, don't read the comments on social media. And if you do, don't respond to them. I am terrible at this. I am awful. And I should take my advice more often because it's just not worth it, right? Who cares? Like some faceless loser is like criticizing you in some way. Don't give that person oxygen or that bot. It is just a waste of time. I realized I didn't, so on for women in particular, whether it's candidates or being campaign staff, you'll want to make sure that your family is cared for, right? Like, so if you're a candidate, do you want your children on the campaign trail with you? Do you want them in photos or do you want them not? So you're going to want to have, and again, it is whatever your personal preference is on that, but you'll want to have a strategy and a plan to support that so that you're not concerned about your family while you're doing a tough job of trying to get elected.
Awesome. Yeah, all great advice. I can share that having friends outside of politics is part of my sort of 10 to 15 year plan. I'm working up towards it slowly. First, I have to find the courage to talk to somebody about something other than politics, and we'll see where that goes. Katy, last question here before we go to audience questions. For a candidate who's in the very early stages of building their campaign team, you've talked a lot, and we've talked a lot about the importance of building a strong team with the different competencies that you need to run a winning campaign. What would you encourage them to look for in potential team members, and what are some red flags to try and avoid as you're building that first team?
So if I'm a candidate, let's go from that perspective, you need to know yourself and your needs first as it pertains to a campaign director. There's two tracks commonly. Do you want a campaign director that like you've known for a really long time and trust with your life? They're a friend that goes back decades, that kind of track? Or do you want an expert, like more dispassionate individual, you know, more of like a CEO type that like you trust as a leader to carry out what is needed? That distinction is really important because as a candidate, as a leader, this is your 2IC. This is the person who kind of has your life in their hands for a 30-day period. And so you need to know what your preference is on that. I would say if you're an inexperienced candidate, maybe this is your first go around, you like trust the campaign director to put the right folks together on the team. However, if you're more experienced, then you're going to likely want to have a hand in hiring various senior team members. Again, both of those are fine. You want to focus on the key roles first. So campaign director, financial agent, communications, field operations. And then once you've got the core pieces, you can flesh out the rest. Red flags in campaigners, arrogance. Yeah, if you're good at your job, if you're a good person, if you've had success, that's going to come through naturally. So I would watch out for people who lead a conversation with how amazing they are and how much they should be paid because they're so spectacular. So because sometimes that just might mean they're overcompensating. Disorganization. So a campaign director in particular needs to be efficient and organized. An inability to play with others. If you're described as mercurial, then that can sometimes be a bit of a red flag. Some folks who are, more lone wolf and capable of playing with others are brilliant and talented. And sometimes they actually can thrive in like a senior campaign director role. That might not be the person that you want to bring on in government, though, in like a chief of staff role that requires a lot of collaboration. So just be careful on that one, on that personality piece. And then narcissists. So candidates are often narcissistic enough. So campaigners should not make campaigns about them. Like, you are here to serve the campaign and the team. Be humble, be hardworking. And then I would say, like, as a campaign director, I always want to be the absolute dumbest person in that room on my team. I want the smartest people who are experts in the chosen role that they've taken on, because I want to listen to their advice. I want to take their expertise and fashion it into a campaign. If you're a campaign director, like, you have so much going on already. You don't want to be micromanaging. You don't want to be learning a new skill because you hired the wrong person for a key element of your campaign. So I know it sounds silly, but, like, yeah, aim to be the dumb one. Hire really talented people.
Amazing. Yeah, so true. And I've certainly found that, no one person can do it all, right? So if you're finding yourself in a situation where one person is, to your point, trying to learn new skills in real time, that team needs to be supplemented with people who can have the right attitude, can learn and grow in real time, and strengthen the capacity of the team. I'm going to take a step away to remove the word mercurial from my Bumble profile, and hand it to Mike for some audience questions. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I had a message, but you answered a lot of it there, but maybe sort of, which I love actually, Katy, all the detail you share and, like, the behind the scenes and actually how to manage yourself and your family and these things. I think a lot of people don't think of. Campaigns are so intense, right? It takes me like a month to recover after them. But as you walk through kind of all those things to avoid, the question was, like, how do you find those humble, hardworking people? What's a good way, when you're building your team? What do you look for? Where do you look even to find these people?
Yeah, so I think that kind of dovetails nicely with the question about, how do you get involved with a political party? Like, so you find those people through, like, not just networking, but collaborating on projects, collaborating on, like, fundraisers, other events and activities. And you can get to know somebody pretty quickly. There's also a strong, like, rely on word of mouth from people that you trust. People who have had political experience in a number of different markets and have done well, and people from those various markets, will give them like a validating boost. That's often a good sign as well. So if you can trust the feedback, if the feedback is consistent, especially across a variety of different political campaigns. Ultimately, though, like, gut instinct, use your intuition. What is this person's resume? Do people like them? Do I get along with them? Are they excited about this campaign? And then go from there.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that, like, word of mouth, you call the people right? Like you're saying, and see who's worked with them, because when you've gone to war with someone, you find out everything about them,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, reputation is everything. Like, and I think the way that you build a good reputation in politics is number one, like, loyalty. Number two, like, high degree of ethics and hard work, and consistency.
Yeah, and then just another question. So we have a lot of people right now, especially with the leadership race going on in Ontario, and just from your advice, as you've done this so much, both at the federal level and the provincial level across the country, if you're, let's say, like the people who are asking the questions to us, you want to be an MPP or an MLA, you have the goal, or to be an MP. So you're getting involved in the leadership race with that in mind. Eventually you want to run yourself, but how do you, like, balance, making a name for yourself within the party, or being helpful within the party, versus kind of building your own persona and profile so you're an addition to the party, or what tips would you give people who are trying to break in, both, like, on two tracks, right? Like, building their own name recognition, that they would be useful to the party, but also, like, within the party, and actually showing that they can be someone who can deliver and be helpful and be a good candidate.
So I would say, if you're in the midst of a leadership race, going back to, like, things to avoid, like, don't be a narcissist, like, right? This is about your candidate and their success at this time. So your primary focus needs to be on supporting them. Now, however, that doesn't mean that you can't continue to like meet with the EDA or riding association, the folks who have some influence there. You know, even by participating very actively in a leadership race, you are going to get a raised profile naturally through doing that. Like, you don't have to focus on, you know, to promote yourself. You're already helping. People are getting to know you. You're doing a good job. Your reputation is going to be strong. So I would say, keep the focus on your candidate. Be very visible. Be very present. Put their needs first. But simultaneously, make sure you know, like, okay, what area, like what riding is this? Who's on the riding association? You know, is there an existing candidate? What are their plans? Are there other people who are interested? Who is my competition? Like, you can do that work sizing the landscape up, but ultimately, and especially in a public facing way, you are about your leadership candidate.
Right. And it's amazing to me, like the advice I've given people as well. It doesn't really matter who wins if you've shown you can deliver in a leadership race, right?
Smart, very smart leaders, like even in very contentious leadership races, the first thing they do is hire people from their opponent's team, right? Like Christy did that, and it was very wise. So,
yeah, very much so. And one more here. So you have these wins, you know, quite a lot of consecutive wins. Well, maybe we didn't talk about the losses, but do you know, like, especially 2013 when you're behind, do you get a feeling that you're going to win? Or in these leadership races where it's ranked ballot and it's really hard, like in these campaigns, can you think a little bit, did you know you were going to win these, or were you surprised on voting day? Maybe go through a couple.
God, I think this like speaks to my personality, but like I try to not be, but inherently I am a glass half empty kind of person. I am like hypercritical and a little bit like I never want to count something as a victory before it's happened, because that outcome is too implausible for me to consider. So one exception to like, I think it was pretty obvious that Pierre was going to win. We just didn't know by how much. I wanted to make sure that we delivered BC, and that didn't feel uncertain. That didn't feel certain until it was confirmed. Right. 2013, I didn't think that we were going to win until like Vaughn Palmer started speculating on the 6 o'clock news. I knew that we had run the best campaign ever, but it just seemed like, you know, where we started and where we ended, like it just seemed like that gulf was too much to overcome. And then with Andrew, so the BC Liberal leadership race that was in 2018, I had a feeling on the last day when we were rounding up all the calls, and we kept getting like a strong degree of like seconds and third ballot support. So I was like, this could really spike us up to the top. But again, I wasn't like, yep, this is ours. It was still a bit of a surprise, but I had a hopeful inkling, let's say, for all of those examples, but in no way, shape, or form was I like, we're walking away with this, no problem.
Right. That's fascinating. Well, I hope that encourages anyone to keep fighting to the end. George or Emile?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I think, Katy, you brought up so many points here, and one of the challenges I think that a lot of people campaigning have to address is finding good talent. When the good people get taken first, then you're left with, well, who do I get? And actually, one of the points of our whole campaign university and the playbook, which is a paid portion of the thing, is to teach people how to campaign. And I think you touched on a lot of the points that we focus many hours of training in the playbook in showing you how to do this, because I think good campaigners can be taught, but by whom? That's the challenge. How do you actually bring up the people so that each candidate can have a team that's really good if all the good people are taken?
So two things. So number one, don't be afraid to take a chance on somebody. I know sometimes that seems like a big risk, but for like, I had never run a campaign before I did the 2018 leadership race that we won. I was shocked when Andrew called me and asked me, and it was terrifying, but I was like, no, like I know that I can build a good team. I can learn from them. I don't care that everyone else has years more experience and is more talented. Like I'm going to do this. So believe in yourself and don't be afraid to take chances on people who have like a good attitude, a high work ethic, and a desire to support and prove themselves. On the other side, find mentors, right? So like if you want to find somebody that you look up to, that you admire their skills, and just kind of shadow them, right? Learn from them. In terms of building a team of really excellent people, sometimes like there's kind of this political class, right? And so we assume like all the super talented people just live in this circle and we cannot go outside. So when people say all the good people are taken, sometimes that just means like all the people that we know are gone. That does like pull political staff from other jurisdictions, pull somebody with a skill in communications or digital advocacy that may not be political, but those are hard skills that they can apply to a campaign. So you don't have to have like top tier talent with only like, you know, long time records of success on your team. You can balance it out and take a chance on new people.
Yeah, that you see that all the time in the digital and advertising world, where some fresh blood and fresh thinking comes in. One more question from online as well was, you talked about the importance of money, and we skipped over it, which we do teach in the course as well. But how do you find good fundraising people? How do you structure those teams? How do you make sure like the candidates focused on it? A little bit about how you make that part of your campaign happen.
Yeah, so you want to pick the right person to stick handle fundraising, who either has a like professional background in it, doesn't have to be political, but they either have a professional background in it, or they are a high net worth individual with like significant networks. Actually, they don't have to be a high net worth individual, but they need to have broad networks. Because now, actually, given the fundraising rule changes, it's not about who has the deepest pockets, it's about who has the most friends. So find somebody that is engaging, has new networks that maybe are not part of the political sphere already, and then focus on them. You want to like, how do I say this? I guess like sticking on the topic of finding somebody who's got the most networks, like you want to kind of have a broad network. Let's say in one sector, you know, one guy, but he's got 5 friends in a relevant sector next door. So you kind of have to approach this like bundling method, because it has the tendency to snowball, and with restrictive financial donations, it's just the more people you have, the better. And then, of course, before embarking on your fundraising strategy, you want to know, what are the limitations? What is my budget? Where do we want to concentrate this money? Because then if you have a targeted ask rather than, hey, just give me $1,200, if it's like, hey, I need $888 for you today so that we can run this ad, which is going to take us to here. Like the more specific you can get, the better. And then also, if you are able to find somebody on the digital side with like a grassroots advocacy background that specializes in getting small donations from a wide variety of people based on a compelling message.
Yeah, very important.
Good stuff. I mean, and actually asking for money really helps.
Yeah. Don't make assumptions.
They talk about it, but have you asked the money? Oh, right. Yeah, I got to do that too.
Follow up. I'm amazed how little like the time is spent, you know, following up after events or following up after someone, you know, has become a supporter and asking for more. It's so key to have that methodical approach, you know? Exactly.
I know like some people just are too shy, or they think it's gauche. Like, money matters in politics. Like, in order to run a successful campaign, so you just have to get over it. And after you've made the ask, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, then you don't care. Like you're
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's been so really refreshing, Katy, just having you be like so honest about these like nuanced things that happen behind the campaign, which no one thinks about, you know, kind of in the general public or when they're going to run, but they're actually your life, you know, and they're so important.
Yeah,
well, it was an honor to join.
Yeah, thank you, Katy. It was really, really interesting. And just a reminder for those who, if you didn't get a chance to get a question in, you feel free to put your questions in the comments after the fact, or if you're watching this after, not live. We will try to answer those questions, or we'll send them to Katy and see if she can respond after the fact. And of course, this recording will be available after. So if you want to go back and watch it again, you can. And I also want to encourage everybody who's watching or who's in the Facebook group here to take a look at our playbook. It's a really great course that we've created, the A to Z or Z, depending on what country you're in, of campaigning, not only for the candidates, but also the campaign teams. It teaches you everything. And Katy really touched on a lot of things that we dig deep into. And so if you're really serious about running for office, and our goal as a campaign university team is really, it is nonpartisan. We want great people in politics. Like Katy, I'm sure you agreed, finding great people. I don't care where you are in the political spectrum, great people make democracy work. And we need more of them. And so that's the whole goal of the campaign university. So it's agnostic in its strategy and the content. It's really for you if you're thinking of running or a part of the campaign team. Again, thanks, Katy, very much for joining us, and thanks everybody for joining us today. And we'll see you again.
Yeah, thanks, Katy.
Thanks, Katy. Thanks, everyone.